I think the biggest one from my perspective is that you do need to operate with principles, and integrity is really important. Focus on integrity and the service that you deliver, the products and services you deliver to your clients, to your customers. If you've got energy and drive and teachable and maybe even a little humble, doesn't hurt. It's a great place to get started. Success has a fixed price. You get to choose when you pay it, but you don't get to choose what the price is.
All right. Well, I'm really pleased to have Steve Sadler here of the REVA companies, and I'm really glad for everyone to have everyone here who's joining us on But First Principles. Steve, can you just give a real quick introduction, just what you do and who you are?
Certainly, yeah. Steve Sadler, I'm the CEO of the REVA companies, and we're a real estate investment firm. So REVA stands for Real Estate Value Advisors. That company makes acquisitions of office buildings, and then we syndicate those to investors, accredited investors. And then we have a separate company, Regain Investment Management, that administers those investments over a 5 to 10 year lifespan. So
Which
we buy
is,
office buildings and we run them.
yeah, in so many words, buy office buildings and run them. Awesome. So, yeah, and I can't wait to get into that because there's like a lot of money involved in that, and I think you have a great perspective on that. So, first though, we usually start with a couple like rapid fire questions. So, what's one piece of wisdom you would love to offer to other entrepreneurs?
I think the biggest one from my perspective is that you do need to operate with principles, and integrity is really important. And then you have to fight to maintain that. I think there are lots and lots of shortcuts or opportunities to compromise that will come back to haunt you. So those would be really high on my list. Focus on integrity and the service that you deliver, the products and services you deliver to your clients, to your customers.
So you mean run the business according to principles? Whoa.
Yeah, no, I mean exactly. It's a critical piece of it, not only because it's a lot easier in some ways because you don't have to write everything down. You can just know that you're doing things, with integrity. But it flows into all the people that you hire. It flows into the way you conduct yourself, in the business, in the relationships with your clients, in the relationships with all of your employees. And it makes a huge difference, particularly if things get difficult. And inevitably, they will get difficult. If you're running a business and it's never difficult, that you definitely should write a book.
Yeah. How to. Right. Awesome. Yes, obviously I love the unofficial plug for first principles for principles, right? So, okay, and then how about something controversial? Do you feel like what's the most controversial opinion you have about business?
I think that one of the things that you will hear often in business that just makes me nuts is people will say, "Oh, I want to, I've been successful and now I want to give back to the community." And I think that's completely bass backwards. I think if you've been successful, it's because value to the community. It's not that you're taking something away that you now have to give back. That's not how it works. And so I find that one to be really annoying. I think a real entrepreneur is always contributing to their community locally and then more, regionally and nationally. Obviously, it has a roll-up effect, but the whole, oh, it's time to give something back just drives me nuts.
Love that. Yeah. So don't give back, just give.
Yeah, I mean, if you're prospering, in almost every case, it's because you are delivering more value than you're taking out of the equation. So by definition, you're already giving to your community. So I think it's a false construct, and I think it comes from the demonization of quote unquote capitalism or entrepreneurialism as being selfish and greedy, and
Hmm.
all of the entrepreneurs I know, that's not where they come from. It's not where they started. They may be very wealthy or they might have become very prosperous, but they didn't generally start their companies and operate their companies to be rich. They operated to serve their investors and their clients. And then because they deliver value, they were able to be prosperous and prosper personally.
Awesome. Okay, that said, hey, thanks for listening. This is Colin Davis, and I just want to say real quick, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your stories. I'd love to hear what's landing. I'd love to hear what you love about the show and what's not working, what we need to improve, what you don't love. All of that helps. So drop a comment below, and I promise I will personally read every one of the comments. Thanks a lot. What is the most exciting thing for you? What's the most exciting part of being on this podcast for you?
I mean, I like talking about entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurial endeavor is an important part of what makes this country, the United States of America, an interesting and different place. I think it's also, I think I would say, fading from our cultural consciousness. I think that the, corporatization and financialization of business has led to a diminution of the entrepreneur, the business owner in the mind of the public, and the number of people that are seeking to become that seems ever smaller. So I like the idea that your invitation gives me a chance to promote entrepreneurship and individualism because I think those are two really cool things.
Awesome. And why should people listen to you? What's really interesting about you?
Well, I mean, I don't know what's interesting about me. I mean, I've been doing this stuff for a while, so I've got no hair, which is even more credibility than gray hair. Um, but I've been able to run a number of different companies, from startups that were venture capital funded to the company that I'm running now. Uh, and we've had successes and failures, but all through that, I've also been able to be married to one wife the whole time, have five daughters who have all, made it through college and found their way to, productive engagement in the broader community and economy. And I think that kind of balance, being able to be a focused entrepreneur, which is demanding, it is a demanding thing that you undertake when you start a business. And it doesn't do 9 to 5, 5 days a week particularly well. It's takes more than that. But to do it and have some success, but also maintain the focus on your family and the primacy of those relationships, I think that's a tough one. So,
And you
it's
pull
a
it
good thing
off.
if you can do it.
Yeah. Which actually kind of answers the next question. What do you feel like is, I think, actually, I'm guessing, what do you feel like is your biggest accomplishment?
Yeah, I mean, I think family would be the first one. I think we're living in a cultural moment where family has been de-emphasized and perhaps even denigrated. So putting that first, making that a priority, and then fighting to keep it there. I think that is a real accomplishment. It's sort of trite, or it seems that way until you try to do it yourself and you find out that there's really a lot going on. But then the second part is to have uh, in the real estate business, we've been doing this for 20 plus years, and to have gone through the great financial crisis and been one of only five companies in our industry that survived that. And then to sort of go through those cycles, the ups and the downs, and keep going, and to continue to be prosperous through the ups and downs, and have I guess, the either the intestinal fortitude or the stupidity keep trying.
Amen, brother. Yeah. And I really look forward to hearing more of that story too. Um, okay, so the end of your life, what do you want to be known for?
Having the foresight to turn my phone off would be a good thing to be known for.
That too.
Um, I don't, I guess I would say that I would like at the end of my life for my role as a husband and father and provider to be acknowledged as being, a focal point. It's something that I worked hard to do well, and managed to do reasonably well.
Hmm. So as a husband and as a provider too.
Yeah, husband,
For that
father,
ultimate role.
provider. I
Yeah.
mean, that, if, one of the things that you always have to do if you're starting a business or running an entrepreneurial endeavor of whatever kind is you do have to find your why. I mean, why am I doing this? Because there are a lot of other things you could be doing that are easier. And so in many cases, financial remuneration is part of it. And certainly that's true in my case. I mean, I wanted to be able to provide for a large family and have my wife stay home and take care of the children. And so that was an important piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like we're expecting our third, and I'm building my own business, and I just it's those things are cliche, those things are trite until you try to do it. I love that because that's amen.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
you look around and the only thing that probably fails more often than marriages is small businesses. So you're doing two of the hardest things at the same time. It's not nothing.
Just statistically, yeah. Just looking at it, it ain't
Yeah.
nothing. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so those are the just upfront questions. I'm going to shift gears a little bit more storytelling. Um, so can you just tell us about your background, like sort of the 2 minute version, right? Like kind of, and we'll see how far we get
Sure.
as
Yeah,
long as I
yeah.
interrupt. But like growing up, degree in college, business endeavors, like more or less the sweep in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I grew up in a family of five kids in Louisiana, then moved up to the Northeast later in high school type era. Went to college, got a degree in economics and East Asian studies, a
Hmm.
double major. So, and then started my career. First stop was a life insurance salesman for Northwestern Mutual, and
Interesting. Okay.
Um, it was back then that was a straight commission job, was brutal, but the sales training was absolutely the central thing that sort of
Hmm.
set my career in motion.
Hmm.
Because being a good salesman is all about listening and it's all about communicating that you care about whatever is important to that other person. And so those sales skills have followed me through uh, after I left Northwestern Mutual, I went to work in the capital markets division of a bank selling bonds to institutional investors, which then translated into real estate private placements to institutional investors, which then translated into starting my own firm in the real estate side. But the sales skills really carry through everything because sales is essentially customer service. It's like a good salesman is sort of customer service advanced team.
Hmm.
And then your customer service after the guy's a client, that's your, what we think of as customer service. But sales is part of that equation and really probably the most critical part.
Wow. Yes. If you look at it from like a customer journey kind of perspective too,
Yeah.
first touch with like marketing usually, right? Through the sales process to value delivery to taking care like in an ongoing relationship. Yeah, that's what the customer experience is, right? They
Yeah.
can't become a customer who's taken care of if the sales team doesn't first take care of them.
That's right. And the sales team sets the tone for everything. And so back to the first principles thing, I think there's a perception that salespeople are liars and, scumbags. I have not experienced that generally. And I think that if you're a salesperson and you're operating from principles,
Hmm.
and
That's right.
that you now set the whole process in motion down a very positive path.
Yeah. So that's kind of like what you see. That was a great encapsulation of your career and sort of grown up, and sort of that's an interesting commentary that like the thing running through it or the common thread through it was the sales training that you initially received in insurance commission only. Eek. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. That was
Like,
tough.
yeah, it's
That was
not easy.
tough.
Um, but that carried you through to what you're doing. Um,
Well, it didn't,
so
and
yeah,
there's
yeah,
we had some great mentors along the way that helped sort of tailor or shape that.
yeah,
Uh, you
exactly.
know,
Yeah.
early on, a gentleman by the name of John Ross adopted me as a sales guy, and he was just instrumental in helping me understand how valuable a good salesperson can be and how important it is to make
Mm,
those connections with people and to work hard. One of the things that sticks with me, and I repeat it all the time, although I don't give him credit, that he said that I think is really interesting is he said, success has a fixed price. You get to choose when you pay it, but you don't get to choose what the price is. And so you'll find different people. There'll be people who work really hard in the beginning of their careers and they're just, head down, humping it for the first 5 years. And then things seem to get really easy for them.
mm.
And then you see a whole bunch of other people that kind of work at their job and 10, 15 years down the road, they're still not making it. And they look at the guy who busted his tail in the first 5 years and they're like, oh, it's so easy for Fred. It's like, no, Fred just chose to pay that fixed price up front. And now he's reaping the rewards. You chose to pay it in installments and it's taken forever and it's your fault.
You took out the
And so,
loan, right? Yeah, right. Now you're
yeah.
still
And so I just
paying
thought
for the
that
car you're not using. Yeah, right.
it's just a very interesting way to look at it. I don't
Yeah,
think
no, yeah.
people see it that way very often.
No, yeah. I mean, I think that is pretty powerful because, um, I, in so many ways, one of the reasons that I went from doing church work to doing, business, working with businesses is I think, um, the laws of economics are really the laws of human nature. And even the concept of interest, which is different from like usury, right?
Right,
But the
right.
concept of interest is like kind of like what you're describing. I think it's kind of like the physics or it's like the natural law of how it works. Like if you're gonna space it out over time, there's an extra percentage that
Yeah, there's a
of like
premium that you're
output that
paying.
yeah, right, that you're paying
Yeah.
to not just dive all in. Um, yeah, and you can apply those sorts of things in all kinds of areas in
Yeah, I
life.
mean, you
Right?
think
Yeah.
about how you learn things. There are people who will dig in and really work hard at, maybe it's school or maybe it's a trade, and they'll spend a lot of hours, right? Is it Malcolm Gladwell that did the 10,000 hours to
Yeah,
mastery?
exactly.
All
Right.
right, so let's just pretend that's real. 10,000 hours to mastery, you can do it all up front, or you can take 40 years to do it.
Right.
You get to choose, but you don't get to pick the fact that it takes 10,000 hours. So I
Okay,
don't
so
know. I think that
it's yeah. Well, picking up on the career thing. So and even so like you really you chose a very hard path at first, and relatively speaking went
but not
an
voluntarily,
upward.
right? I
Okay, all
chose that
right.
path
What?
because
Yeah.
I
Why?
I
Why?
grad yeah, I
Yeah.
graduated from Florida State in 1988 and couldn't get a job.
Yeah. The great
So
wasn't that the Great
I went,
Recession? Like
yeah, it
or
was
some
bad.
they talked about it. Yeah.
Timing is everything. But
Yeah.
so yeah, but it was a tough path up front for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll kind of gloss over the middle a little bit because I would really like to get into the sort of entrepreneurial journey. You decided to start your own company, um, and and this I don't want to focus too much on this moment, but I am curious: how hard was it to decide to start your own company? Was it, and how much sort of preparation was it? Sort of a leap? Like what did that look like to make the decision to start your own company?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the decision was sort of, I mean, much like going into insurance, it wasn't entirely, my own
Sure.
decision, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So the bank that I worked for, where I was doing real estate private placements, got bought out by another bank, and it was clear that to succeed there, I would have to relocate my family, and so that didn't seem appealing. And so my next best idea was, well, I just do this on my own. And so I started it, and so the decision itself wasn't that difficult. Now, convincing my wife, pregnant with our third child at the time, that was a little more difficult.
yeah. Sure.
Right, guys, you might maybe you know what that feels like.
Yes. Right. Exactly. You got to do, yeah. You got to do what?
Yeah, wait a minute. What about that steady paycheck thing? That wasn't in our vows, sweetheart. You can go
Yeah.
check. Yeah, it didn't say
For
steady
richer,
paycheck.
poorer? I mean, come on. We got to
Yeah,
have a little poorer in there, right?
yeah, could spice things up.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. So you had a partner, right, that you began with, that somebody else you've been working with?
Yeah, so I mean, there were a number of iterations, but the real estate value advisors we started. My brother Chris was my partner from the outset, and so
Okay.
we worked together side by side, building the operation and the organization. finding the properties to buy, figuring out how to do that, raising the capital, all of that stuff. And then he retired really about a year ago. And so now it's solopreneur at the moment.
Okay. So, yeah, man, I can only imagine you have hundreds of lessons you could share because um, it seems to me anyway, like you mentioned, 2008, right? Getting through that, and then um, dealing with like real estate and large amounts of money and all the ins and outs of being able to handle that. Um, I it's not easy and I think for some people actually like that kind of thing is the I don't know, just this sort of like pipe dream or almost like that would be so amazing, but I could never do it. It's way too competitive. So like I just don't even try.
Yeah.
So like how'd you do it? How'd you have the cojones or however you want to talk about it, the intestinal fortitude, to get in there and try?
I mean, I think that my experience in the capital markets division of Signet Bank was such that, I mean, I saw lots of really smart people, but
Hmm.
the people doing the things I wanted to do didn't seem overly impressive, right? So
Okay.
it's not like these are PhD guys that are doing like some sort of deep math, computer stuff that I couldn't understand.
Way beyond you.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it really isn't. I mean, I refer to the commercial real estate business as the last bastion of the C plus student. I mean, it's a place where common
Interesting. Okay.
sense and gumption are worth more than a PhD or an MBA. And so, it's a great place if you've got energy and drive and are teachable and maybe even a little humble, doesn't hurt. It's a great place to get started.
Mm,
And the numbers are big, but I think one of the things we as a culture or country focus on too much is like the big money numbers.
mm.
I think we have grown our company at one point where we were managing, you know, $1.2 billion worth of real estate.
Which is an
But we
impressive
were
number, but
It's a
but
big number,
yeah.
but we were actually less profitable then
Yeah.
than we
Right.
are today with a
Yes.
$500 million portfolio. So the numbers can be a little, they can obfuscate the reality. It can be a smoke screen. And I tell my children this, it's like if you're driving down the road and you see some guy in a nice car that you really think, wow, he must be doing well, don't be so sure. It may be mortgaged to the hilt. He might be in deep trouble. You just don't know. So the,
Yeah.
the numbers are a funny thing, and I like to think about bottom line profitability and control of my time more than, how big is the asset base.
That's which is awesome to me. And that's I mean that to me that is exactly what first principles mean. Like stay focused on what is really important and you can discern the signal for the noise. And in any bit, I mean, and I would argue really there's important differences in different industries, but ultimately it's the same stuff. It's,
Yeah.
like, are you profitable? What's your business model? Like, do you have the cash flow? And how do you build a team? Right.
Yeah, you have good people, good product, and a good plan. Those things are really important. And along the way, you'll learn lessons. And I think important part too is to have enough time in your life, enough space where you can actually stop and think about what you're doing and maybe make some notes and and truly learn from it. One of the
Mhm.
experiences I had early, or maybe, well, it seems like a long time ago now, running a startup company in the financial services space. We had done an A round of venture capital funding, had raised $10 million. Hewlett Packard was our lead investor.
Wow.
And then the 2000.com bust came along, and Hewlett Packard pulled out of our B round funding, and the whole thing fell apart.
Wow. Yeah.
And so we're all of a sudden we went from everything's about to be amazing to not so good. And so we had 45 employees at the time. I pulled everybody together and I said, all right, here's what's happening. I was like, this is very unpleasant, uncomfortable. I don't know how it's going to go. We're still fighting through it, but I need everybody to go home and figure out how little you can live on. And,
Mm.
and because we don't have the
That's
money we thought we were going to have. And we don't want to fire anybody. And so what happened was, and I said, look, there's nothing against you if you say I have to have my whole salary. I understand that, right? Some people,
mhm.
that's where they're at. We ended up with an 80% reduction in payroll. And we ran like that for the next 90 days
So
until it was,
20%, like you're saying that like you were paying 20%, the outgoing was 20%. Holy moly.
yeah.
That
So
wasn't,
the people had
that's amazing. That's great.
voluntarily
Yeah.
taken an 80% pay cut as a
Yeah.
group.
Yeah.
Um, and so one of the lessons I've taken from that is operating with integrity is critical. So we
Yeah.
told people what was going on,
Yeah.
but doing the hard thing.
Yeah.
If there's something in front of you that's hard, and it's sort of like you're kind of avoiding it, that's probably the thing you need to do right now.
Yeah. I mean,
And
honestly,
and
that's yeah. The biggest wins I've ever gotten for clients was exactly that. Just having them face the reality and make a hard choice, which is mindset, right? Like, digging deep and really getting clarity and making a hard decision, right? Um, yeah, I mean, it's not in, new software or, like fancy numbers or whatever. It's just I've got to do something. I have to have a conversation I really don't want to have.
yeah, right. And it doesn't reflect well on me because I've failed to raise the capital. I'm the leader of the company, and so I'm embarrassed, and I hate everything about it. But it has to be done. And so part of what I think you gain, not only do you grow as an individual, as a man, as a business leader, but you gain the respect of your peers and your team, and
Hmm.
that's a big deal
It's really
because
big.
if people respect you and trust you, you can go a lot farther with that team than if they're looking at you going, God, this guy's only out for himself. I know he's lying to me because I saw whatever the headlines. I saw that Hewlett Packard shut everything down. So he's just, you know, and now you lose the trust and you lose the respect. And now how do you get it back?
Yeah. Wow. And I guess, you've already kind of said this, but I would love it if could you put this into like a single phrase? What was the principle that you're operating on when you made that decision? When you had that conversation with the employees, like or just what's the set of principles if you could articulate that?
Yeah, I think in that specific case, it was to be honest and treat my employees with respect. I think it would have been disrespectful to them to pretend I could solve this problem and it wouldn't have any impact on them.
Yeah.
And so I wanted them to know what was going on so they could choose
Right.
to to do, to stay with us and keep fighting, or make an honest and honorable decision and choose to not do that. I mean, I understood both sides of that. I wanted everybody to stay because I really hoped at that point that we could get it, resurrected. Um, but I think that's probably at the core, that's probably a mutual respect. The fact that it was difficult and that it was unpleasant and uncomfortable for me personally was in fact a signal that it was really important.
Hmm.
And so we often will dodge things that are unpleasant because it's unpleasant, but that might be exactly the wrong thing to do.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the idea that obstacle is the way?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
that's it. I mean,
Yeah,
essentially. Uh,
you're growing through all of them. I mean, what you think is a failure today, there's seeds of enormous success in that failure. And the challenge is, to not stop. Don't quit. Learn from it, shift directions, tweak things, but don't quit.
Well, don't quit. I mean, that's the conversation we had beforehand. I was saying it's been the lesson just keeps getting driven home for me that life is an uphill uh, climb, right? That you, I mean, there's certain moments when it's appropriate to take a break, to take a vacation, and you should, and that should celebrate a victory. That like, wow, you've really arrived at a new level. But unless you like get your hiking gear back on, like strap the boots back on and start hiking uphill again, things only deteriorate if you stay
Yeah.
there. So like it really is a continual like what's the next hard thing to do? What's the next hard thing to do? What's the next hard thing to do? Um, and I mean, like I don't agree with everything like David Goggins. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Um,
No, not really.
he's one of those like mental toughness guys who was a Navy SEAL and just done incredible things to break his body, and like sort of extreme challenges, right? So I don't agree with everything that he says, but just his fundamental attitude that like, what's the next challenge? Okay, I got that one done. What's the next challenge? I mean, I think that's really healthy, and it's actually it there's a clarity about it because rather than thinking like or resenting or thinking that life should be easy and then there's some challenges, actually no. There's some challenges. I mean, life is challenges, and then there's some moments that are really nice.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I think that's right. That attitude is really important. It's like, if you buy a car and you think it's never going to break down, need gas or an oil change, you're going to be disappointed in that relationship.
Right.
Your physical body. I mean, if you don't move your body and stress your body regularly, you're going to find that doesn't work out well for you. I mean, I think that's true. Everything has, there's resistance, and particularly if you're trying to make change or do something different, there's going to be more resistance.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so we're getting pretty close to time. So, and I'd really love to dive into like a challenging moment, in the same theme, right? The challenging moment, something that was really dark where you thought, man, I don't think we're going to get through this, but then you did. And how'd you get through it?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think for us in the real estate side, we have the downturn in 08, 09, so the great financial crisis, I guess is what they call that now.
Hmm.
And then we've had COVID, which was an enormous challenge. We run office buildings, and
Yeah.
most people were no longer going to office buildings. So that was a
Yeah. Yeah.
terrifying moment. And in a lot of ways, that moment has continued because office attendance, is still not back to what it used to be.
Yeah.
And so we're right now in probably one of the most challenging times for
Mm.
office ownership and management that certainly that I've ever experienced. And so, I mean, this is one of those moments. We have a $350 million fund that's a portfolio of, whatever, 30 or 40 buildings, and trying to get mortgage debt refinanced in the current environment is horrifically difficult.
Yeah.
And we started that process in March, late March, early April, and we're still fighting through it. But if you don't get it done, then you've got foreclosure issues. And, if you've got a foreclosure on your record, then getting a loan on the next building is almost impossible. It's like, it's an existential thing.
Mm.
And so the challenge has just been to keep pushing, keep fighting, keep looking for, an angle, a way around whatever the obstacle is. And
Yeah.
there are lots of them.
Yeah. Okay.
But
So let's,
we're about to close a $53 million mortgage next week. So we're making progress.
okay, good. Well, and so yeah, I would like to so let's go back to 2008 and just kind of dissect that a little bit because, economy blew up basically, and especially around housing and then, all the
Yep.
real estate, right? And lending and all that. So, um, basically what kind of situation did you face and what pivot or what change or what thing did you do to get through it?
Well, so we were in the middle of a couple of transactions as the financial crisis was coming, or everything was unraveling. We had I don't know, $2 million deposit that was non-refundable with a seller of a property, and the lender in our deal, our lender was Lehman Brothers. Well,
Oh.
Lehman Brothers stopped existing right about that time. And so all of a sudden, what we experienced, and this is
Wow.
how not to do it, is we were like a week out away from closing, and nobody would return our phone call from the lender.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, they knew what was going on. And rather than pick up the phone and tell us, hey, we're all screwed, they just ghosted us. And so we had to find, at the 11th and a half hour, we had to find a new lender, which we were very fortunate and
You
were able
did.
to do.
Wow.
Yeah. But in that, if we had not, the seller could have legitimately kept our $2 million deposit and we would have been out of luck.
Yeah.
And I mean, $2 million is a lot of money in 2008,
Generally,
still a lot
yeah.
of money. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't lose that kind of money without it stinging.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right. I know a number of businesses that are their total revenue is under $2 million and they're doing quite well, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, okay, so it sounds like what you did was you just worked hard and just tried to find a way to through it. But I know it lasted a couple of years. I mean,
Yeah.
was it sort of a
Well, and then so what we shifted, where we shifted is we essentially stopped trying to do new transactions because the
yeah,
financing had just become impossible. And we focused on our operational side and we tightened up the ship there and we spent the next 2 or 3 years focused on operations
so
and
because
building
there's
our
two sides of the
skill.
business. There was at that time there was the two sides,
Right.
from that time of acquisition and then maintenance, and so you kicked in or you really focused on the maintenance and not the acquisition.
That's right. The acquisition side had sort of become problematic. And so we focused on buildings, operations management, and
Yeah,
built our skill set, built our team, built our technology base.
yeah,
And then what we did is sort of a leveraged pivot is we then, as the great financial crisis was, winding down, we
yeah.
launched a value add fund to go take over properties that needed a lot of attention. And because of the focus on the management side, we had, or, the skill set. We thought we had the skill set to do that. And so that was our next thing on the
So
acquisition
if
side.
just so I'm clear, so you kind of rode out the storm with the operations side of things, what I called maintenance a few minutes ago, management side,
Right.
um, and then when everyone else is panicking, if you stay even keeled, eventually, if you have still some money, things have bottomed out, you could buy very inexpensively. It sounds like that's what you're saying is like towards the tail end when things had kind of bottomed out and were coming back up, you were then able to acquire again at a very
That's
low rate.
right. No, that's exactly right. We had built a
Awesome.
skill set that allowed us to transform properties and had built a track record of, surviving through this downturn. And that became our calling card with investors and property owners. And so we were
Nice.
able to go out and acquire assets and build I think it was a $150 million fund, and then eventually the capital markets came back and you could borrow again. And we
Yeah.
went back to doing our original syndication business as well. But
Gotcha.
yeah, so again, from the seeds of what looks like a defeat, there was an opportunity and, we focused on skills that translated into being able to run that value add fund.
Okay. So I guess I'm gonna kind of wrap two things together and say, okay, the reverberations from COVID, they're still being felt in your industry, in your space. Um, so kind of the two things is how do you get through that, but also like what's the vision ahead? So kind of those things wrapped together. Like what do you see
Yeah,
as the
so
path
I
forward? What do
mean,
you see
I
as the vision?
think
Yeah.
what we're seeing is that there are certain markets, geographies where the whole COVID thing is just not as bad. So we
Okay.
saw we saw prosperity in Richmond, Virginia, and Tampa, Florida, that was very different from what was happening in New York or LA.
Sure.
And so we focus on those kinds of markets, suburban Southeast. But again, we're using the same sort of management and property management skills. We've rebuilt the team and we're doing
Hmm.
that value add thing. So ultimately, what's required when things are tough is you have to work harder. And
Go figure. Yeah.
that's the magic. Unfortunately, it's not that tasty a pill, but you have to work harder. And that's what we're doing. And so,
Mm.
we're working hard to make sure our tenants are happy so that they don't leave. We're working hard to make
Mm.
sure our leasing brokers are, dialed in and we're getting a look at every possible new tenant in our buildings. We're working hard with our investors to communicate clearly with them what's going on communicate early and often, even if it's bad news. And so the future, the vision for the future is we're going to continue to grow, and we're building out a team that will allow this enterprise to survive without the founder and prosper beyond just, say my lifetime. We
Yeah.
we expect this enterprise to continue on helping the employees and our investors to prosper in their own lives.
Hmm. That's awesome. So, the path forward is actually goes back to what you said very near the beginning that if you add value, if you bring value, if you serve, deliver, it comes back to you. And that's essentially how you create the economic engine. And so
I
you
think
guys are going
that's
to
exactly
serve,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to deliver more than you consume. I think I said this to you previously, but there's two
Yeah.
kinds of people in the world.
Yeah.
The first kind of people are self-employed and they know it. The other kind of people are self-employed and they don't know it. And so what ends up happening is the ones who don't know it, if they don't add enough value at Corporation X, they will get fired eventually. It might take longer in a big company than it does in a small company. But if you're not adding value far beyond what you consume in your salary and benefits at your company, you're in trouble. You may not know it yet, but you are. And so I think that's the whole equation. It's like I'm looking for places where there are problems that I can solve. And so the value add real estate is one I know I can solve. We've done it before. I can go in there and fix that property and make it work again financially as an investment for that client. You know, you're in the business of coming into a situation, observing the landscape, and then helping people see things from a different perspective and perhaps take actions that maybe were uncomfortable or they didn't think of, right? And so you're adding value, not because you're bringing this guy new software, but you're bringing him a new approach,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
so I think ultimately you're exactly right. That's the thing. You have to be delivering. And if you do, you will be, without even trying, you'll be serving your community, and you will ultimately be prospered if you're providing honest service and delivering real value.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like I studied philosophy in college and really fell in love with classical Greek philosophy.
Was
And
there no French Renaissance art history classes?
yeah, I know, or yeah, right. Something else
Darn.
that's like, just really what's the word? Esoteric, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, yeah, I that was my thing. I mean, I love it because I do think it's the foundation. Like the things that the Greek philosophers figured out and thought through and really like rigorously tested from a like rational standpoint have stood the test of time. It like kind of plays
Yes, they
itself out
have.
again and again and again, right? Again,
Yep.
first principles idea, right? So and one of those things that like is that I mean, and this is a distillation of a lot of things, but basically like the human person is precisely that creature which is capable of productivity and cooperation at the same time, and that and creative productivity, not sort of just a pre-programmed kind of productivity, but
Right.
like
Not just mechanistic, but more than that.
right, and all kinds of new ways, and that's like building tools and building the wheel and building fire and then building civilizations, right? And it's literally proper to the human nature that is activated when we're entrepreneurial and we think about things and make decisions and go in a direction that's productive, right? Um,
Yeah.
and so like I've been saying lately, the more I've been talking to business owners and doing this is just like entrepreneurship will save the world. And I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, but especially since I was a missionary for a while, right? But in the idea that that's like properly what fulfills us. That's what we're made for, is to this kind of
Yeah.
creativity, productivity, cooperation, right? And so I love and what I'm getting to is what you just said a few minutes ago, that like I love that frame. Like either you're self-employed, you're an entrepreneur and you know it and you're doing that consciously, or you're self-employed, you're an entrepreneur, and you just don't realize it yet. But either
Right.
way, like you're an
Either
entrepreneur.
way, you have to deliver value. You got to
Right.
find a way to
Yes.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I
So,
look at it, you were talking about the missionary field and working with churches. And I've said this to my kids and anybody who will listen. It's like, I think when Gates created Microsoft, he did more for humanity than whatever he might do, whether you think it's good or bad, in his foundation, because he built software and systems and services that were productive and helped other people be productive.
yeah.
And so if you look at historically, the impact of Microsoft is almost, unimaginable in its scale and scope. And you don't, you can't do that through any other mechanism.
Oh man, I would
You
love to go down that rabbit hole and talk about that. Like, like yes, having the impact and scale and like, the exponential leverage effect of what we can do through organizations. I think that's what happened through Greek philosophy. I think that's what happened through Roman politics. I think that's what happened, like there's a number of instances, in
Yeah,
history
where
that,
institutions that actually work came into being. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. But it's time. We're
Right.
time with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, certainly. I
So,
understand.
that's, I mean, that's, and I'm sure we'll continue the conversation one way or another. So, last questions, real simple. Just where do people find you? Like, how do they contact you, and who would you like to connect with?
So, always interested in working with young entrepreneurially inclined people and helping where I can. The best way to contact me would be an email, and it's steve at revacompanies.com. That's REVA companies all spelled out.com.
Cool.
And of course, we're, always seeking new real estate opportunities and new investors and all of that stuff. But at this point in my career, I really enjoy having the opportunity to influence and assist younger folks that are trying to, do something interesting.
Yeah. So if you're trying to do something interesting, if you're entrepreneurially inclined, reach out, Steve at revacompanies.com. That's fantastic. And actually, I should say this live that I've had some problems with the show notes, the description. So I've been like, hey, that'll be in the show notes. So we're getting that fixed. That your contact information should be in the show notes. So yeah, we're trying to get that fixed. And either way, really appreciate it, Steve.
Thank you,
Fantastic.
Colin. It was a delight, and best of luck in your endeavors. And I look forward to talking to you on our coaching session.
Excellent. Likewise. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for listening. This is Colin Davis signing out. And remember, we're here to help you on your journey as an entrepreneur at But First Principle.